So today in the shop, we've got these Bilstein B8 6112 coilovers that we're going to be installing on the front of our 2018 F150. One thing we will note is that we have some Rancho quick lifts in here right now that we're pulling out, but when you do this install, you're going to need your factory struts so you can use the top hat. We'll explain a little bit more on that later, but the install is going to be pretty much the same regardless. Also, another thing to note is the setup I've got here is for 15 to 18 trucks, but there is also a kit available for the older generations. With all that out of the way, we've got the truck on the lift, so let's jump into this install. We removed the wheels and started disassembly by removing the dust cap from the axle nut. Then the axle nut itself can be removed. Next, at the side of the knuckle, remove the brake line brackets that are held here. 2 on the knuckle, then another bracket up by the upper control arm. If you want to remove extra push clips for more room, you can do that as well. We then disconnected the sway bar from the end links and removed the nut. Also loosen the upper control arm from the knuckle, but leave the nut threaded on a couple threads for now. You might need the assistance of a hammer to break it loose. To relieve tension from the UCAs, loosen the frame bolts by a couple turns. We removed 2 of the 3 nuts up top that held the coilover, but left the third for now to hold it up. Down at the bottom of the coilover, we removed the outer tie rod from the knuckle. After that, we removed the 2 lower bolts that hold the coilover to the lower control arm. Now we can remove the UCA nut from the knuckle and slide the UCA out of the way. After removing the last nut on top of the coilover, it can now be removed from the strut tower. Alright, so now we've got everything laid out on the bench here, and what you'll see is when you get these Bilsteins in the box, they're going to come as just a separate strut like this with your spring, your lower seat, and the little bumper that you'll need to get it installed. Now the Bilsteins are adjustable, so the lowest setting there is going to be stock, and then it'll go up in 1/2 inch increments all the way up to 2 inches. We're putting ours at 2 to get the most amount of lift out of it, but realistically, if you wanted to put these in at a stock height and then adjust the height later, you could go back and do that if you decide to make modifications to your truck. Like I said though, we're sticking with the 2 inch. What you'll end up doing is we've got a factory strut here with our put together coilover. And so what's gonna happen is you're gonna be taking apart the factory strut to get this top hat off. And when you have that on, you can combine that basically with the Bilstein strut, the new spring that they give you, and then put the new top hat after you've set where you want the height to be with the lower seat. So once that's all combined, you've got the whole strut unit together, you can take that whole unit and put it in the truck. Since we've got one side done, we just have to take care of the other, so we're gonna show you how to put that together and we'll get it put on the truck. You will need a spring compressor to squeeze the spring enough to be able to remove the upper nut from the strut cap. Then the strut will fall from the spring and you can relieve the tension on the spring. With the top hat on the bench, you can remove the rubber isolator from the inside of the hat assembly, leaving us with the hat and dust cover. Take a razor blade and vertically cut the dust cover up to the end of the plastic. This makes it much easier to remove from the hat. It's now time to recompress the spring. The rubber isolator and top hat can go on as well, making sure our alignment is correct. Keeping that same alignment from the top hat and lower mount pin, bring up the new shock and thread on the top mount nut. Once it's fully tightened, double check your alignment and remove the coilover assembly from the spring compressor. Fit the new coilover into the strut tower, then attach the top nuts to hold it in place for now. With the upper 3 nuts loosely holding the coilover, insert the 2 lower mount studs through the strut and lower control arm. Then fully tighten them up. After the lower is tight, we can finish tightening the upper nuts to the strut. Bring down the upper control arm and set it back into the knuckle. Thread on the nut loosely for now. Next, the axle nut can be installed back to the axle. Do not over-tighten this nut, then replace the dust cap. We're also ready to completely tighten the upper control arm nut, followed by the tie rod. The sway bar can be put back onto the end link and tightened down as well. On the side of the knuckle, replace the brake line brackets. Also reattach the upper bracket to the side of the frame. Last step is to torque back down the upper control arm frame mount so the UCA can keep its necessary tension. Find these leveling struts by clicking the link in the description below and head over to our website at stage3motorsports.com for all of your F-150 suspension needs.